After weeks of silence, whispers, and speculation, ESPN finally made the call that no one saw coming. The face of First Take, the woman millions woke up to every morning, was gone. And in her place, a new voice was stepping into one of the most watched debate arenas on television. Viewers thought it was just another hosting change, but insiders say this story runs far deeper. Because when Molly Qerim quietly walked away after nearly a decade, it wasn't just the end of an era. It was the beginning of something ESPN wasn't fully prepared for. It happened fast. Almost too fast for anyone to process. One morning, Molly Qerim's voice was there, guiding fiery debates between Stephen A. Smith and his guests like she'd done for nearly a decade. The next, her Instagram post appeared, calm, composed, and heartbreakingly final. After much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter and step away from First Take, she wrote. No dramatic farewell, no on-air goodbye, just a simple post that felt more like a quiet curtain fall than an exit from one of ESPN's biggest stages. Fans were stunned. How could someone who helped define the identity of First Take walk away while still under contract? Rumors began to swirl. Whispers of creative disagreements, behind-the-scenes tension, and negotiations that didn't quite go as planned. Some insiders hinted that timing, not talent, was the real problem. Others suggested the move was less about walking away, and more about being pushed toward a change no one saw coming. But while fans were still processing Molly's goodbye, ESPN was already moving behind the scenes, auditioning, testing, and quietly searching for the one person bold enough to fill her chair. For the next few weeks, First Take felt different, almost like a stage searching for its lead. Each morning, a new face appeared behind the desk, holding the weight of a legacy that millions of viewers had come to expect. Amina Smith brought sharp energy. MJ Acosta Ruiz radiated confidence. Courtney Cronin kept things cool and analytical, while Joe Fortenbaugh added his signature humor to the mix. It was a rotating cast of talent, all talented, all hungry, but each aware that this wasn't just another hosting gig. It was the chair, the one that came with the responsibility of keeping pace with Stephen A. Smith, a man who debates like it's oxygen. Behind the cameras, executives watched closely, measuring chemistry, control, and that unteachable quality, presence. Social media turned it into a guessing game. Who would take the throne? Fans debated as passionately as the analysts themselves, each episode feeling like an unspoken audition. And then came the name few saw coming, Shae Cornette. To most viewers, Shae Cornette wasn't a new name, but she wasn't a household one either. She'd built her reputation the old-fashioned way, quietly, consistently, and without shortcuts. Her journey began at the Big Ten Network, where she cut her teeth covering college sports, learning how to keep her composure under pressure and her voice steady when the crowd roared. From there, she became a sideline reporter in Chicago for Fox 32, covering the Bears. Rain, snow, or blazing heat, always with the same calm, collected presence. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. And in a business that rewards flash, Shae built her career on foundation, not fame. Over time, that foundation carried her to ESPN, where she became a trusted face on SportsCenter. She wasn't chasing headlines, she was earning respect. Viewers noticed her ability to balance confidence with warmth, authority with approachability. And behind the camera, she was balancing something even more impressive: motherhood. Shae is married to Jordan Cornette, a former Notre Dame basketball player and now a college basketball analyst for NBC. Together, they're raising 2 children while both working in a business that rarely slows down. When asked how she manages it all, Shae once smiled and said, "This business is hard and can be a roller coaster. You just have to enjoy the ride." It wasn't a soundbite. It was her philosophy. But what made ESPN see her as the perfect choice? Inside ESPN, the decision wasn't made overnight. The network needed someone who could do more than just moderate debates. They needed stability. Someone who could balance Stephen A. Smith's explosive energy without dimming it. Someone who could command attention, but also know when to step back and let the fire burn. That combination is rare, but according to insiders, Shae Cornette had it. The calm confidence, the quick wit, and the steady hand that First Take needed in a post-Molly era. Executives saw what many fans hadn't noticed yet. She could anchor chaos with composure. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She just needed to speak. Burke Magnus, ESPN's president of content, later admitted that the timing of everything caught everyone off guard. The one thing that was unexpected, he said, was the timing of all this. Her deal ran through the end of the year, but once the news leaked, it got out of our respective controls. Behind that polished statement, though, insiders whispered something else. That ESPN wanted fresh energy on one of its longest-running shows, a face that brought warmth and authority, empathy and edge, someone who could bridge the new generation of sports fans with the old guard of debate television. Still, that doesn't mean the audience is ready for the switch. The internet didn't stay quiet for long. Within minutes of the announcement, First Take began trending across social media, and not for the usual on-air fireworks. Fans flooded timelines with mixed emotions. Some celebrated Shae's promotion, calling it a breath of fresh air, and praising ESPN for choosing someone who'd worked her way up from the ground. Others, though, couldn't hide their nostalgia. To them, Molly Qerim wasn't just a host. She was the heartbeat of the show, the calm in the middle of the storm that was Stephen A's energy. Clips of her best moments resurfaced. The eye rolls, the perfectly timed reactions, the way she kept chaotic debates from spiraling out of control. Hashtags like "Thank you, Molly" and "First Take Era" began trending, turning her farewell into something closer to a tribute. Meanwhile, speculation grew about where she might go next. Would she launch her own project? Join another network? Or maybe take a break from the spotlight altogether? But through all the noise, one thing became clear. First Take had entered a new chapter, and as viewers argued over whether anyone could truly replace Molly Qerim, Shae Cornette was quietly preparing to prove she didn't have to replace anyone. She just had to be herself. Meanwhile, Shae is stepping into the spotlight, and she knows all eyes are on her. As the headlines faded and the reality set in, one question began to echo across the sports world. What's next for Molly Qerim? After nearly 10 years at First Take, her absence left a gap that no one could immediately fill. But those close to the situation say Molly isn't gone, just pivoting. Rumors are already swirling about her next move. A new project in digital media, perhaps her own interview series, or even a podcast where she can speak freely, away from the constraints of daily television. Inside ESPN, the door isn't completely closed either. Burke Magnus hinted that talks about a different role were still on the table, suggesting that this may not be a full goodbye. Colleagues describe her departure as more of a pause than an ending, a chance to reset, refocus, and reimagine what comes next. And maybe that's the beauty of it. For a woman who helped define what it means to hold her ground in a male-dominated space, this feels less like an exit and more like evolution. She's leaving on her own terms, with grace and power intact. As one fan wrote, "Molly didn't just host First Take, she owned it. This isn't goodbye, just a new chapter." But for Shae Cornette, the challenge begins now. There's something almost poetic about what's happening at First Take right now. One era closing, another quietly beginning. For nearly a decade, Molly Qerim stood at the center of chaos, guiding, grounding, and reminding everyone that power doesn't always come from volume. Now that same role, that same challenge, belongs to Shae Cornette, a woman who built her path not through headlines, but through hard work and humility. In a world still dominated by louder voices, both women represent something bigger than a hosting gig. They've shown that leadership in sports media doesn't have to shout to be heard. It just has to be steady, smart, and real. And whether fans are still missing Molly or rooting for Shae, one thing is clear: women aren't just part of the conversation anymore, they're shaping it. Because in the end, First Take isn't just about debates. It's about who dares to take the first step. Who do you think will shine brighter, Molly or Shae? Tell us below.